it did something. At least on my end. It should be running now. Hey, it yes. Did something. It is running. At least on my end. And then welcome. I'm here again with Tekkendog, and now we have a stream, long-awaited stream. No, not really. And yeah, the topic is human memory and interviewing methods. The reason why I thought of that topic is for two reasons. One is I'm currently reading that book. It's a two-volume book. First volume is Memory for Events, and second is Memory for People. I have both, but I think after the first 700 pages, I will probably delay the second one. I don't know until when, perhaps indefinitely or whatever, because it's also less interesting for me. But yeah. And the other thing is, there are, in case you have been living under a rock, or also mainstream news would also be living under a rock, because there were the grooming gangs report from Rupert Lowe and the Citizen Vigilant movie, and they both talked about the same issue, namely that there is about 250,000 girls were being raped in England by a very specific gang of Pakistani men. They always say Asian, but I mean, yeah, of course, it's Asian. Pakistani are Asians, but I mean, yeah. And one aspect is which the grooming gang report went into in great detail was about how the Islamic theology contributes to this whole thing, which I agree, and at the moment I won't go into it. But another big aspect is the compliance of the institutions, and yeah, this stream is touching on that issue, and it also, like, I also like to do teaching streams. So I will touch on this issue, but I will also take a step further back, and talk about human memory in general, and namely, how does it work? When is it flawed? And how do people abuse it to create false things? And so yeah, and then very common belief in the today's Western world is that everything should be done through institutions. With institution, I mean government, academia, court system, whatever you can think of. Everything should be done through an institution, and the only reason why it isn't perfect is because we haven't figured out the right rule set. And I disagree with that assumption, and I think Tekkendog will be disagreeing with that assumption even more than I do. Am I right?
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah. Are you a bit sounding like a tin can, or is it just?
Am I?
Oh, oh, I
Yeah,
noticed.
most likely.
I noticed I still had video running in the background.
No.
Can you do reduce your loudness a bit, because now it's on over like it's too much. Okay, if it's too loud, then it cuts out certain things, and then it has a bad quality. Can you reduce it a bit?
Is this any better?
Do it even less, or perhaps it's my end. Can you say something again?
Hello, can you hear me? How's this sound?
Yeah, it's good. It was on my end. I was having my loudness also too loud. So anyway, yeah, and yeah. Going back to the topic. Um, the one reason why institutions cannot work, or at least are not insufficient to create utopia, is because institutions are created and maintained by humans, and so why should humans be flawed but the institution is not? And yeah, so and then something which I will talk in later streams, but yeah, for example, accountability. If you have a human, then he can take accountability. If you have an institution, then you can just dissolve it and say, yeah, it's not, I just did my job. It's actually the institution's fault, like the rule said, but we won't change it. And yeah, so they can very easily dodge responsibility, which is never uh, aiding in creating utopia. Uh, yeah, and I'm this script was written a bit in the past at the beginning. Now I'm at page 274, so I'm a bit further now. Yeah, and here is the order of what I want to show. First, what is a schemata? Then, how are memories stored and retrieved? An influence of emotions and repeated events on the memory. Then false memories, like not every memory we have is accurate, or to be this is more specific, some memory which we have are of events or things which never existed, and this is the part here. Then examples of implementation, how you can implant false memories, and then how to do a proper interview, and in the end, how to overcome misleading effects. I took the title from the book. I don't think it's an actual overcoming, it's just a reducing of effect. But yeah, everything where I have a yellow section, this means I go down and then we can read stuff from the book. I took a picture with my phone and then I to put it through a text in image to text, so there may be some issues with wordings and stuff, like so yeah, so it's not perfect. Anyway, let's start with what is a schemata. I think here I don't have a text, I didn't look it up, and I can give a very simple example. Essentially, stereotypes are schematas. Like, this is how American behaves, or an American tourist behaves, or this is how the speech patterns of Donald Trump is, or when Mr. Jones goes to the bar, this is the way he behaves there. So I'm with this, I mean the ordered event, or in more technical terms, the script. So he always enters it, goes to this specific table, then he waits until this specific service person is there, and then he orders for a drink. And like this, the order could be a schemata, or or in case of Trump, it's a specific speaking pattern, or in case of ethnicity, it could be certain behavioral patterns or whatever. So schemata is just a pattern of things which yeah, it's a pattern of things which we can observe. And then memories are essentially we have multiple types of memories. One, I will only go into two. One is episodic memories. I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's episodic memory. I can quickly check it in the book. Where is the... Is it here? Can I see it in the titles? No, I can quickly find it. I'm pretty sure it's called episodic memory. These are individual facts we remember. For example, when we enter, and these specific facts are like individual things that are not connected to anything. So, for example, we enter a room and there we see a pony standing in that room, for example. It has nothing to do with anything that we can create. Like, for example, if we go into a classroom and we see the teacher in the front, then that would be a memory that is connected to a schemata, because a classroom has associated a teacher in there and school banks and chairs and tables and a blackboard, and then there is the teacher, and he's usually either at the front teaching or sitting and waiting until the students come, or he is among the students explaining stuff to them. So there we have the memories, or the individual things are connected to a schemata. But if we enter a room and there is a pony in there, that is not connected to any schemata, and therefore, because we don't have that many experiences of ponies in rooms, and so that's an individual memory. And so these are the two types of memories which I want to point out. And as I already or what you can imply from my statement, which is correct, is since we have, as soon as we see something a repeated amount of times, then we start creating schematas, and then it doesn't. Then it stops being episodic memory. I have to look it up if it's really episodic memory.
Yeah, episodic. Yeah.
Is it episodic? Okay. Good. And for example, if we go to the house of Cassandra, and there is always the pony in there, and the pony always behaves in a certain way, then this turns into a schemata as well. So, but it's of course only the people who know Cassandra and have been at her place multiple times. Only those will have it as a schemata. So these are the two different types of memories, and in the beginning we have a lot of episodic memories. And then within a short amount of time, like minutes to a few days, we forget almost all of them. And then we still, if something is surprising, either because it's just weird, or because it is contrary to a schemata, then episodic events can remain in the memory. But usually the thing which stays in the memory much better are things that fit into a schemata. And then it's also, if we don't know if something happens, then we speculate that it happened the way that the schemata would predict. So if we don't remember what should I say? If we don't remember anymore if Trump said, yeah, it's very big, very great, it's the greatest thing, or whatever, and if we don't remember if he said it during a speech and somebody asked, then we will just fill it out according to the schemata, and we do some guesswork. And then also one thing which is interesting is we can store things according to schematas, but also we can retrieve memories through schematas. So, and then, for example, if we view things through schemata A. Yeah, I don't think I can't think of as an example at the moment. But if you have a memory that is big, has many different things, facets to it. Oh, and then let's say we view it through the schemata of clothing or style or whatever. Then we can focus on some aspects of that memory. And if we try to remember the thing through the schemata of conversation topic, then we will go through this very same memory in a different way, and then we can draw from the memory different aspects, because it's kind of like a, if the schemata of retrieval and storage align these things, we can remember. So this is point 1 and 2. Do you have any thoughts on that, or questions, or additions?
Nope, not yet.
Mm-hmm. Is this stuff you already knew, or this?
Uh, a vague understanding of. I've never heard that word scimitar before.
It's one of there are various theories on how human psychology and thinking works, and schemata is one of these theories. So it's a pretty established branch of psychology, but or aspect of psychology.
Now it sounds like the Joker from The Dark Knight.
What sounds like that?
Yeah, the scimitar and the episodic memory. You know, if I tell you a gangbanger is going to get shot or a truck full of soldiers is going to get blown up, nobody cares. But if one little old mayor is going to die, everybody loses their mind.
Yeah,
Because
that's
one of them is normal and to be expected, and the other one's shocking.
yes, that's fully accurate. That's that's actually a good example of schemata, and that we remember things much better when they contradict schemata. And also, at some point, I will probably make a video, not a stream, about how I am. In case anybody is interested of the viewers or you, um, I started doing a devlog of a game, and for 4 years I have not uploaded anything on it. But occasionally I think about it, and recently or while reading this book here, I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I created a full social simulation aspect to the NPCs with accurate memory, how they store memory and stuff, and I have made a lot of thoughts, and they sound doable and pretty interesting, but I'm not sure if it's just like the Oblivion NPCs, which have a very elaborate programming and stuff like this, and then they turn into a meme for being that dumb. I'm not sure if it turns out like this, and I'm also not sure if I ever will continue working on my game, but I certainly continue thinking about it, and yeah, there I will explain all these things, how I would implement them in software, and yeah, it would be an interesting video. I just don't know yet if or when it comes out, but yeah, anyway, here the next question is by the way, while reading this book, it's like 95% of the time I think that is obvious, but nice hearing it an expert explain it in detail and going through all the experiments on how they made sure it is true. And it's and 5% or so, it's like, okay, that wasn't like I would have expected it. But yeah, so essentially, me reading the book is similar to what you just said. Um, it I have a vague intuition for it, but it makes sense. And yeah. So now emotions here. Yeah, let's just read through this. Um, do you want to read, or should I? I mean, I just ask
If you
because.
want me to, I can.
Hmm?
If you want me to, I can.
Can I? Yeah, if you want to. This is a bit paragraph by paragraph. I don't know how to make this smaller, so yeah. If you can read through this here, these two paragraphs, and then do the other ones.
You want to, might be a delay there because I'm watching it on
Ah,
YouTube. You're not sharing your screen with me.
oh, that makes sense. And let's share the screen, entire screen. Can you see it now?
That is, yeah, I see it.
Mhm.
Okay, what do you want me to read?
Just
Yeah.
this paragraph, and when you're finished, I will scroll down into this one. These two.
Okay.
But now is. Oh, I hope. Oh, I'm just glad. I almost feared that my laptop crashed. So it happens. This is. I don't know. I have to switch to a better Linux version distribution. Anyway. Mhm.
Okay. By repeated events, we refer to a stream of similar related events. Criminal offenses that occur repeatedly, such as child physical or sexual abuse, domestic violence, and criminal harassment, raise legal and cognitive difficulties that appear at first to be irreconcilable. On the one hand, it is contrary to fundamental justice to require a person to defend himself or herself against a vague and imprecise charge. The charge must be particular enough for the accused to raise a defense. When the charge under investigation involves repeated similar experiences, this often requires the complainant to report details of a particular instance or subset of instances of the offense. On the other hand, as described in more detail below, when several similar experiences are encountered, memory for the series of instances becomes more general and less particular. Despite its forensic relevance, there has been very little recent systematic study of memory for instances of repeated events and repeated tests of repeated events, and even less on the effect of a retention interval on such memory reports. One exception is that survey researchers have attempted to decompose a string of related events into a single event on which the series is constructed. One technique of doing so involves a type of repeated testing, e.g., means
That's just
loftus.
that's just who did the experiment. You can ignore the brackets.
but, but the research emphasis has not been upon retention interval. Furthermore, from the archival work on the CSA, the longer the retention interval, the less likely it is that an allegation of CSA will be prosecuted, and the less likely it is that there will be a successful conviction. Presumably, these outcomes are based upon presumptions by prosecutors and triers of fact of the reliability of such memories after a very long interval.
Yes, I forgot that I put this also here. Here, it's not emotion. It's not just emotion, but also repeated events of memory. So the repeated events have the effect that if you have something happen to you a lot, then you remember only the gist of it. Like they differentiate between the gist, so the core of the stereotype or of the schemata, and the peripheral information, which is just something which is also there but not really that central to the schemata. And if you have repeated events, this is the case, for example, let's say somebody assaults somebody else, here CSA is, I think, child sexual assault. And then the issue is, if it happens several times, then the victim can say with certainty this usually happens, but they cannot specifically remember on what happened at which time. So, for example, this happened on Tuesday and this happened on Thursday last week, and then this victim may create mix up the similar events that happened repeated times, and then because they mix up when it happened, and then they might create a representative one instead of the actual one which happened on Thursday, and then suddenly contradictions could sneak in, and then in the court then people say, oh, the witness contradicted itself, it's an unreliable witness. And so in a way, victims of repeated events are less reliable witnesses than if the rapist only raped this person once or something like this. And so, and also if it is further in the past, then it also is of course less reliable because it's further in the past. This is the effect of repeated event on memory, and this is distortions. So do you have also another question about what you read? Because not everything is obvious if you only read these two paragraphs.
No, keep going.
Now, emotions. This is an interim summary. So the book is essentially every chapter is written by one person or a team on a specific topic, usually one which they research themselves. And then this one is in the middle of the chapter of emotion and memory, and it's a summary in the middle, and then it continues further with other things. Here it may be helpful to pause and review the arguments so far. Overall, the evidence suggests that emotions tend to promote memory for an agent's gist and central materials. This effect seems widespread. It is evident in the laboratory and outside of it. Event with many different sorts of emotional material. Where is the mouse? Here. So, sorry. Evident with many different sorts of materials. The event at a wide range of emotional intensities. Indeed, even at the extreme level of emotions associated with trauma, emotions seem usually to promote memory accuracy and longevity. However, we have already seen reasons to wrap these claims in several layers of caution. First, we have several times flagged the fact that the data may be altered when we consider other types of emotions, and we will turn to that issue at last in the next section. Second, we have repeatedly noted that the evidence cannot be understood as indication that emotions lead to uniformly accurate memories. It does not. No matter what the circumstances, memory errors are possible and perhaps even likely, and some amount of forgetting will occur as time goes by. Thus, for example, victims of trauma tend to remember their horrible experience all too well, but with some errors or gaps in their recall. The same is true for people who experience more moderate levels of emotions. Third, the memory benefit produced by emotion applies, as we have discussed, primarily to the gist of the emotional event and to details associated with that gist. In contrast, emotion appear to have the opposite effect. Memory working in contrast, emotion, I think here may be an issue. issue due to me digitizing it. I could look it up, but I think it means in contrast, emotion on the peripheral memory, emotions appear to have the opposite effect, working against memory accuracy for more peripheral aspect of the event, including aspects that in many criminal cases be forensically crucial. This pattern of memory narrowing is often attributed to the emotion itself, but in truth may be better understood as being caused by the presence of salient visual stimuli within the event that captures witnesses' attention. So, in summary, if to or in my words, um, emotions tend to make the gist of the memory more accurate and survive longer, possibly due to us thinking more about them, but it could also be that the pure fact, or it could be that we paid more attention during the emotional event to the gist of it, and therefore it's a stronger memory. It is not known why it is the case that we remember the gist more, but yeah, we do. We remember the gist more, but peripheral information is lost more easily. And here it is worth pointing out this is emotions like anger or grief or horror or like emotions like this. So I can very easily see that if somebody is very emotional, they focus much more on the thing they are emotional about, so the story or whatever, and they are less likely to just look around and see, oh, here is a chair standing there, and so I don't think that people do that very often during an argument or whatever. So that's the thing. So and one thing which also in the book is mentioned, not here now, here it's only alluded. Even with trauma, there is the thing going around that some events can be so traumatic that we forget it. The human brain blocks it out, at the memory out, and then at a later stage when we process it, we can regain that information or that memory. And based on this book, and I've slightly looked at other places as well, and they seem to confirm it. This is wrong. We cannot. This claim that we can have an effect that is so traumatic that that the brain blocks it out, and then at a later stage we can gain the memory. That is not scientifically observed so far or documented. What we have are we can have memory loss due to trauma, but usually this is not just trauma alone. It's also like heavy alcohol consumption or drug consumption or hitting a head on some place, or like it's a trauma combined with something that causes natural memory loss, that this can cause memory loss, but then the lost memory cannot be retrieved. Or the other thing which also happens a lot is a person has experienced something, they remember it, and then they learn of something and now they view it as traumatic, and then they reframe the emotions as a trauma, and then suddenly they have traumatic memories. But the issue is, before they already had their memories, they had it framed differently, and they were talking about these memories, they just talked them in a less emotional state, and suddenly they started talking about it in emotional version, and that's why it appears as if they have lost the memory, at least to them, and then they gained it back. So that's one, and the third one is just they fabricated the traumatic memory. Like if you have hypnosis or other strategies to get the memory, then they just invent memories out of thin air. That also exists. So I think these three are about how trauma could about the false claim that trauma can make something so bad that it suppresses the memory, and that's it seems that is not actually happening in reality. So a trauma is usually also just like other emotional situations. You can focus much more on the gist of it and have a very good memory on that, and the peripheral information is lost. And emotion that is singled out in the book is stress. Stress just overall makes memory worse for the gist of it and for the peripheral memory. So don't be stressed. I can recommend it. So yeah, this is the how memories affect how emotions affect memory. Do you have a thought on it?
Hmm. They interested to find out where that the blocking of traumatic events and then remembering them later comes from. Because I've known people that have had that happen and they say they don't remember stuff and you start talking about it and then it comes back. So where's that come from? It's not been observed.
It's the issue is it's not scientifically observed where we can control for variables. Um,
Yeah.
I think the reason why it is like this is I actually believe the scientists here. I think uh, which person goes to a person who has just experienced a trauma and says, uh, "Yeah, the memories you remember, they are actually fabricated now." Who says that to a
Mm.
person who experienced trauma? Or one thing which is they brought in the book as an example is like, I'm not sure if it's what's in the book or some place else, but um, the people actually were talking about this before. They're just not in a traumatic event. So like if you um, or they were thinking about it before, or just they had the memory, but they just didn't notice it or categorize it as a traumatic event, and so essentially that switch happened, and so it isn't it is actually not now remembering, but instead it's a recategorization of already existing memories. So that's my understanding of it. I have never talked to anybody or lived with anybody who had lost memories that were regained. So uh, that's yeah, I can be wrong, but I am probably on the side of the scientists if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Anybody I've talked to that's had that, it was always trauma from when they were a child. I don't know about anybody who was an adult and blocked out their memory or anything like that. I don't know.
Um, yeah, can you talk again because my headphone has a bad contact and now it's just switched again to bad noise. Um,
Can you hear me
oh
now?
yeah, it's
Is it
good again. I just had to move the cable a bit. Now it's good again. Um,
everybody watch this stream and comment, subscribe so Ben Rex can afford new headphones.
no, it's just the cable which is bad. It's very cheap material. I just would need to go and get stuff. But yeah, um, and I'm demonetized anyway. So because my channel is too small, not for any other reasons. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I what? Oh yeah. Have you watched the debate between Malcolm and Stephen Molyneux? Malcolm Collins and Stephen Molyneux about I think should you beat your children or something like this.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Malcolm in that stream said essentially all the symptoms. And I think he said it during the debate, but if not, then he said it elsewhere. Essentially, most of what makes a traumatic event traumatic is our interpretation or framing of it, and what he went through during his childhood. Most people would find highly traumatic, and because he didn't frame it as traumatic, uh, he doesn't have the symptoms of it. And there are also scientific studies that confirm that, in a sense that they tested and found out that um, traumatic symptoms correlate much more with our belief of having a traumatic event than with actually what happened. And so I don't want to say it is 100% correlation, like it's 100% only our beliefs, because I think if, for example, somebody is sexually violated during a very important development stage, then even if the society views it as perfectly normal, because there are societies that view that as perfectly normal, actually quite a lot. If we just go far enough away from the Western world, sexual abuse of children, of boys by men, and stuff like this is pretty normal, surprisingly normal. But yeah, even if they don't frame it as negative, it could still impact our understanding of social relationships, our trust in people. If we have certain developmental stages that are blocked and stuff like this, yeah. So everything, I think, especially in formative years, it can have lasting impacts and stuff like this. But I think we heavily underestimate how much our framing of the thing impacts the actual symptoms and how much we are impacted by a traumatic event. And so if we now have a therapist who talks with us through all this, what has happened and how we have to grieve and work through it and whatever, it is highly possible that we make everything worse. So that's as a person who has never had any problems at all, say that. I actually view my life as having no problems at all, and my life is pretty privileged compared to many people. So yeah, but I don't know it from the insider perspective, and I also don't know it from the perspective of an empathetic person who accompanies somebody who through life who went through a traumatic event. But as a purely distant intellectual perspective, I believe a lot of it is our framing of it. So that's my stance. I don't know if how accurate it is, and I think you are better in a better situation to see the other position.
From a purely scientific thing, I think it's probably accurate, but that doesn't mean, and that's why you got to have principles and you got to have a standard. Because so your dad comes home drunk every evening and punches you in the eye. Well, everybody's dad in the trailer park is doing that, and most of them are punching him in both eyes. So I guess it's not all that bad and not all that traumatic to you. Still wrong.
Yeah.
You know, in ancient Japan, the samurais would molest the boys that were working for them, and then when they grew up, they'd do it to them. That's just what everybody did. That don't mean nobody was traumatized by it because that was the culture, but that's still extremely wrong. So, and
Yeah.
then about therapists, yeah, there's therapists that are good and therapy that's important, but I think you got to pay attention and really try to find a good one. And then if you're dealing with something like that, to also try and find a good one, because I think a lot of them will just tell you what you want to hear, and yeah, they'll dig down and make the trauma worse just to justify you coming back and spending more time and money with them.
Yeah, that's also a claim I heard on the internet. I've never been to a therapist, so I'm just like with traumatic childhood. It's a topic I only know about from hearsay.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know how one should react with this claim I made when they are already in a situation where they suffer from traumatic experiences or memories and symptoms, because going to such a person and just say, yeah, it's all made up anyway, don't view yourself like this and then everything goes away. It's not really a response that works well. um
Well, it's a balance too. Like you can't, something happens and it's in your memory and affects your life, you can't ignore it. Then also, you don't want that thing to run your entire life and be like the thing that you identify with, or that,
mhm.
you don't want it to become part of you.
Yes.
And everybody's had something traumatic, the some scale in their life.
I
And
like to disagree there. I would
the
say
farther back, well, I'm sure you've had a pet that's died.
I never had pets. Or yeah,
Never.
we had birds, but I didn't care about these. They were just
Pets,
sitting
family
there while I
members.
was playing Lego at another place. And my mother complained once that we went to a birdhouse and they said, "Oh, cool, these birds! We want to have them too." And she said, "Yeah, we have them. We had exactly the bird we wanted to have. We already had them. We just didn't care about them." So no pets dying made a dramatic thing. I think I actually believe that this is a harmful therapeutic thing to assume everybody had something traumatic happen to them. Because then you go, it's then you go looking for where you have been a victim and how you can attribute stuff in you to somebody else or something else. I think, and even I just don't agree with that, because I think it's. Uh, I mean, if you let's say like this, you could say everybody experiences injustices when they go through life, and then they can look for where have they oppressed. Oh, this person spelled my wrong name wrong, or this person did whatever, and then uh, this is the whole concept of microaggressions. But for me, it's like whenever I see a microaggression, for me these are micro amusements. I find them funny. So it's it's just because something happened to you doesn't mean it has to be oppressive, or it has to be hurtful, or it has to turn to you into a victim or be traumatic or whatever. I think, of course, some things like it's since we already talk about the light topic of child rape, um, let's go to the extreme and oh, is it called isna? I will quickly have to look up isna. Is that the word Islam? No, I'm not sure. No, it's not this. It's a similar sounding word. There is a concept that happens all around the world, but not every society has to make legal rules about this. Islam does, namely, if an adult man has sex with a young girl, prepubescent girl, which has a thinner, more soft skin, and so, and shorter vaginal canal. Um, and then, if he has sex with that girl, then it may happen that this membrane or the skin between the vaginal canal and the anal canal this ruptures, and then since there is now a hole between the two, then she cannot keep the poo in her, or it could also go to the place where the pee comes from, and so she is essentially a walking shit dispenser, because everywhere she goes, that is something which obviously is for the rest of the life, and it's she is unclean, obviously, and stuff. I mean, religiously unclean, and also stinks and more abuse, more sensitive to getting ill and everything. So it's negative in every possible way, and that is something which can happen. And then you are medically hurt, you are socially ostracized, you are psychologically harmed, and so there are things which are nobody can agree. Nobody disagrees. This is just harmful, and also in Islam, it's there are rulings against it. Although it is difficult to prove that this was the specific cause, so chances are low that somebody get persecuted for it. But still, even in Islam, it's something bad to be avoided. It's just like they take a gamble, and if they somehow manage to get it wrong, then when the family of the girl is motivated, then they can bring it to the justice, to the court, and then if they can prove that the husband was actually the cause and not something else, then he can get punished for it. Yeah. Anyway, it's a complicated thing, but there are traumatic things which can happen, which can be horrible for people, and they are always negative. But I think in my life, nothing that is even remotely traumatic happened. I mean, perhaps as a baby, I was once scared because my mom was not in the same room as me and I wanted her to be, or so, whatever. I mean, theoretically, stuff can happen, but why should this be traumatic? I mean, I don't remember it anymore, and I don't see any impacts of it. And searching for it, you will always find patterns that you can interpret traumas into it. I think that whole thing is pointless, and also self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think this is just therapeutic nonsense. But yeah, rant finished.
Ah, so I say everything. Everybody's had something traumatic.
Yeah, disagree.
That's that's anybody. It depends on the individual. Like you look back, I look back. I can't think of anything that I would call traumatic that happened to me.
Yeah.
But depending on your mindset and your situation, and like I had good parents around me that, if something happened, I had people looking out for me, so stuff that happened to me, I don't feel traumatic, but somebody else could have.
I mean,
It's how is the how you were raised, your mindset, your people you have around you, the I mean, have being raised in church too, and always having connection to God is immensely helpful. So
I
it's
agree.
there's always something.
And I also think some people are just more sensitive, more
Definitely.
prone to things, more prone to depression, more prone to loneliness, more prone to anxiety or whatever. So some people are just like this, and so the same event can have different effects on different people, and not and I don't want to just say, yeah, everybody, whenever somebody feels bad, they are to blame. And also I believe there are spiritual things as well. Bible speaks of demons. I believe they exist and they have an impact even today. So these exist as well. But I think that if I view traumatic events as they didn't exist unless proven otherwise. And some people go around and they think everybody has traumas, we just have to discover them. And I think that is a non falsifiable view that is harmful. And I tend to just not care about views that are non falsifiable, especially those that are on top of it harmful as well.
Yeah. So everybody has had events in their life that they could have turned into drama.
Yeah, but I mean, I could now leave the room here, go to the
Mm-hmm.
closest crossroads or whatever, and in that span of time, I could find something traumatic if I wanted to. Just because I walked for 100 meters or 300 feet for you Americans. Um, I could find traumatic events, I can fabricate them. The same thing with symbolism in books. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
to some degree, there are actually books with symbolism in there, and there are whatever, but you can take a random number and take a random book and find the symbolism about this number in that book. It's
Oh,
so easy to fabricate this information. It's That's why I don't give a lot of thought to these ideas.
oh.
Yeah, but
Well, it's, I think it's the individual and especially females, I think, are much more prone to it. It's just your emotions and what kind of course you're on, how good I don't know, your moral and mental, spiritual compass is aligned. But plenty of people have actual trauma, like you were talking about being abused as a child, and they use that as the core identifying feature of their entire life, and they sit in the corner and cry about it.
mm-hmm.
Another person like uh, Corey Taylor, the lead singer of Slipknot, he was raped as a child. He has had trauma over it, turned it into amazing music that many people love listening to.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I could also point at a similar angle, namely India, or let's say Japan. It was bombed twice with the most powerful bombs that were ever dropped on it. I don't know if it's true, but perhaps there have been dropped more powerful bombs. But like uh,
Not in
the
war, test.
yeah yeah not at war on an enemy or whatever. And what happened to Japan? They never asked for reparations. They just said, let's work. Um, there is a superior culture out of it. Let's learn from them. And then they created the economic wonder. South Korea, the same. And now look at all the African countries. Oh no, this person now, it's China who is taking all our money and then all our resources, and these are taking from us and these are taking from us, we poor victims. But give them a
Mhm.
fountain, dig them a hole, well, where they can get water, and then it decays because they didn't maintain it. I think it's similar to a trauma and emotions. Uh, to some point, to some degree, it's how you view it, and to some degree, is now that it happened, like some things are actually pretty terrible and objectively wrong. Something is just now that it happened, what do you do with this situation? And yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also a marker for how privileged and how peaceful your society is compared to others. I mean, things that if somebody gets attacked by a wolf in our Western culture today, that's a pretty traumatic event. But back in the day when everybody was a farmer or a sheep herder, probably wasn't all that uncommon to have to go fight a wolf.
David in the Bible. Yeah, I was fighting wolves and bears, and so the Goliath is just another enemy, and he has blasphemed God. Therefore, God is on my side. Yeah. Um, I think it's a claim I heard. It's from the Red Pill community, and they are not always the best with evolutionary psychology and stuff. So I'm not 100% sure it's true, but I think it's pretty plausible. Namely, our brain has a thing in it that calibrates danger, and if the most dangerous thing you ever experienced in your life is your mom being in going shopping while you were at home as a child, um, if that's the most terrifying thing you ever experienced in all your life, then your danger detection kit in your brain is so hypersensitive that even misgendering your whatever is considered a life threatening situation. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that also impacted. But yeah, recently I heard another thing. Yeah. Anyway, we go off track. But yeah, but it was a good conversation. Um, Now false memories. This is an interesting thing for what you asked about. How could a person have forgotten memories and then retrieved it again? And here is one aspect of that also plays into this, namely false memories. Here, do you want to read again?
All right.
Yeah, they're essentially these two. Um,
I hit the wrong button again.
yes.
All right. Clarence Elkins was convicted of a 1998 rape and murder of his mother-in-law, Judith Johnson, and the rape and beating of his 6-year-old niece, Brooke Sutton. His niece witnessed the murder and was left to die by the murderer rapist, with no physical evidence linking Elkins to the attack. His niece's testimony was the compelling, crucial evidence that persuaded the jury to convict her uncle. Only hours after attack, the girl told police that the intruder was her uncle. While in jail, Elkins was able to obtain a cigarette butt of another inmate, Earl Mann, who was a convicted sex offender and was staying next door to the Elkinses at the time of the attack. DNA testing revealed that the DNA from the cigarette was a match with the samples found at the murder scene. After spending 7 years in prison, Elkins was exonerated in December of '05. This example illustrates that illusionary or false memories can have damaging effects. This issue is particularly important to practitioners in the legal field because the consequence of false memories can be devastating, as in the case of Clarence Elkins. Furthermore, this is just one of many cases in which people have been wrongly convicted and incarcerated based on false memory. The term false memories has been used broadly to refer to memorial experiences that are remembered differently from the way the experience actually occurred, as well as accounts of recollected events that never actually happened. False memories can include, but are not limited to, a word misremembered as being in a list when it was not presented, remembered items from a picture that were not presented in the scene, and misremembered events from childhood. As we document, these inaccurate memories are often associated with the same vivid ex- experiential details that accompany vertical memories. Thus, vivid false recollections may be difficult to discriminate from true memories. The topic of illusionary memory is one that has recently received a great deal of attention in the popular media because of a multitude of high-profile criminal cases in which the major incriminating evidence has been memories exhumed, sometimes with questionable techniques. During the course of psychiatric psycho,
Psychotherapy.
psychotherapy, however, memory theorists have long been concerned with false memories. Their concern, in part, is based on the notion that understanding illusionary recollections can aid in the understanding of human memory in general.
Yes. This is the only thing I have here because the things that I want to talk about are too much that I cannot find. If we want to read everything, find paragraph, it's not easy. Yeah. So, false memory. I think. Can you give one or two sentence description what a false memory is?
But something happens and you remember what happened, but you lose details. You lose the guy who stole your purse. You think he was wearing a red shirt, but he was wearing a blue shirt.
Mm, it's not quite true. It's this would be a distorted memory. I'm not sure if that is part of it. It's here. It's more things that did not exist. Um, you remember things that didn't exist. So instead of the thing, for example, if take this example, um, somebody was like robbing you or whatever, and then in hindsight you remember him having a gun even though he didn't have a gun. So it's not just like a different thing, but it's something that is actually absent, but you remember it anyway. So that's false memories. I think distorted memories are not false memories, but I'm not 100% sure. So, exactly. And I asked you to summarize it just because I wanted to know if you understood it correctly. And so, because then things can be cleared up. So, um, what was in the text is false memories can be very detailed. Like,
Hmm.
um, oh, now want to see if perhaps I read something from the book. I don't have it written out here in the document. Internalized false confessions is a very interesting uh, chapter as well. Yeah, I will just read it. It's probably similar length, a bit longer than what you just read. As I wrote this chapter, my attention was drawn to a courtroom in South Carolina where a 41-year-old Billy Wayne Cope was just convicted for the rape and murder of his 12-year-old daughter Amanda. Cope awoke one morning to find the oldest of his three daughters face down, cold and lifeless in her bed. It looked as if she had been strangled to death. Cope's wife worked the night shift, so she was not home. Immediately he called 911, but when the police arrived, they treated him more like a suspect than a grief-stricken father. Based on erroneous first impression that there was no sign of a forced entry and belief that Cope showed too little emotion, the police interviewed him twice, sent him to the hospital for a examination, and then took him to the station for questioning that would begin late at night and extend into the early morning. For more than 24 hours, Cope vehemently asserted his innocence despite persistent charges and accusations. For example, I swear before God standing right here, I did not do anything to my daughter. During that time, he waived his rights, volunteered to be examined, and 5 times offered to take a polygraphy test. So you have faith in the polygraphy tests? He was asked. Yes, he replied. The next morning, after spending the night in jail without food or drink, bewildered, still separated from family and friend, and without counsel, Cope was administered a polygraph test by a police examiner who reported to him that he failed. In fact, a leading researcher who later scored the charts indicated that Cope had actually passed. Devastated by the result, Cope wondered aloud if a person could commit such a heinous act without knowing it. An idea suggested to him the previous night by his interrogators. According to the examiner, Cope broke down and admitted that I must have done it. He then allegedly followed his admission with a full narrative story of how he molested and strangled his daughter, cleaned up, and went back to sleep. Cope spent the next 2.5 years in jail alone, still lacking contact with family, friends, or an attorney. 2.5 days. Did I say years? I'm not sure. Yeah, he spent 2.5 days in jail alone without any social contact. He then handwrote a second confession in which he said that he had sexually assaulted and killed Amanda within the context of a dream. At that point, the police took him back to the house where he reenacted a videotape. Reenacted on videotape and in vivid and gruesome detail how he had awakened in the middle of the night, molested and killed Amanda while in a dissociated state. Suddenly realized that he had what he had done and went back to sleep. Forgot what had occurred the next morning, then once again recalled his action. This reenactment was followed by a fourth, even more detailed confession, typed by one of the detectives and signed by Cope. The guy. So how much should I continue? Because this is what he did, and yeah, I will continue reading. Serving as an eyewitness, as an expert witness for the defense in this case, I testified that Cope's confession were taken under highly stressful circumstances, that police investigators used interrogation tactics that put innocent people at risk, and that Cope's statements were filled with contradictions and factual errors. None of this meant that Cope was innocent or that his confessions were false. Shortly thereafter, however, DNA tests revealed that the donor of the semen and salva found on Amanda's dead body was not Cope's, but a sex offender who was new to the neighborhood and who had broken into other homes, raping and killing other girls in the same way. One would surmise from this DNA extortion that Billy Wayne Cope would have been released from jail, freed and compensated. Yet just hours after DNA results were received, the police told Cope's wife in a egregious lie that the semen was her husband's, wired her and sent her to jail to try to get her husband to confess again, which he did not. She died of surgery complications shortly thereafter, believing that the semen was her husband's. When the DNA was later matched to James Sanders, a serial offender, the prosecutor, armed with a police-induced confession that now did not match the fact of the crime, and lacking any evidence whatsoever of a link between the two men, charged Cope with conspiracy, arguing that he had pimped his daughter out to Sanders. The only additional evidence at trial was presented by a female friend of Cope's late wife, who was corresponding with the defendant. She presented 2 confessional notes allegedly received shortly before trial that Cope had sent her from jail. But Cope denied writing these notes, which were penned on paper he had no access to and in handwriting that was likely not his own. As for the witness, she had once before been charged with forgery in another matter. In short, there was no evidence of Cope's involvement other than his original confessions. Yet, after only 5 hours of deliberation in South California, jury voted to convict him. in criminal justice, confession evidence is a prosecutor's most potent weapon, so much so that one prominent legal scholar put it that its introduction makes other aspects of a trial superfluous. Confessions play a vital role in law enforcement and crime control. They are also a recurring source of controversy, however, and now I'm looking if I still need to read further. It's even prioritized over more other evidence like DNA and samples. I need to pause. Yeah. Yeah, this is a case of a false confession, and this is actually a case based on what this chapter says. It's a kind of representative, but there is too little research that studies can be made about. So it's just this chapter they just brought a few examples on how false confessions happen, and I think one of the core defining features is the ones which are obvious, which they found, were of people who were in highly stressful situations. During these highly stressful situations, they were presented with false evidence, and then they assume, first question if it's possible, and then they start to go. Then they can describe in much detail how it can happen, but later they deny that it happened. So that's, as far as I understood it, that's a pattern for certain types of false confessions or internalized false confessions. Like during this phase, this person believed it to have happened, and afterwards and before he didn't believe it happened. But of course, let's take a person who is highly agreeable. I think such a person who is highly agreeable or has a few other personality traits, such a person may actually believe it even after this highly stressful situation is over. And such a person would have a false internalized confession and wouldn't even reject it afterwards when this person left the stressful situation, and therefore would be convicted, and everybody would believe it even though it's wrong, false. So yeah, this is something which also was in the book, which I thought was worth reading. Did you find it entertaining?
Yeah, I've heard autistic people are even worse at that. They'll give false confessions for stuff they didn't do.
I'm currently reading the chapter about it's a very the title is called of the chapter title is called Psychological Impairment, Eyewitness Testimony and False Memories, Individual Differences. And I find it interesting that they used the first example they bring, or the first people they look at, is people with mental retardation. When I asked ChatGPT about it, Perplexity about it, then it says, that's not an outdated term, the modern term is this. But the researcher, they made published a paper in, I think, 2005 or something like this. And they used the word mental retardation, so apparently it's scientifically correct. And yes, I think that they also said autism. Yes, autism are more likely to give positive answers. So if the or affirmative answers. if they don't remember quite if it happened or not, then they just say, yeah, it did happen. Like that is with autism. And with schizophrenia, those are the chapters which I have read so far, or the sub chapters. Schizophrenia. There, the main thing is they're very bad at source tracking.
Mm.
And they cannot. They are very bad at differentiating if something is an internal source or an external source. So if they saw it, or if they thought it, or if somebody else said it. So that's also a speculation on the hallucination of them, because they may have internal thoughts and then they perceive it as external. And one thing which is also interesting, people with schizophrenia are much more confident in their source tracking, despite being worse at it.
Mm.
But I believe that this is just one small aspect, and they only looked at one small aspect, so it's probably other mental issues play a role in it, and I can also imagine that some spiritual aspects also play a role in it. But yeah, and yeah, going back to the false memories, and false memories, they are not. False memories are. You cannot differentiate a false memory based on how much detail is in there. Perhaps false memories may have even more details than the actual ones, and false memories only form based on things we would find plausible. The issue is, as you saw with the internalized false confession I talked about, if you can bring false evidences and convince somebody it might be possible, then you changed the opinion of the person how plausible it is, and then the false memories can come in. So even if something which is highly implausible, if you can make the person believe, you just have to convince the person that it's plausible, and then the false memory can come. So that's one aspect. Then whole events can be falsely remembered. And one thing which can also be false, this is it's like emotions. Just because you have higher emotions attached to something, that doesn't make it more accurate. It's on things which are more emotional tend to the gist of the story tend to be better preserved in the memory, or it tend to be less quickly forgotten. But the issue is, let's bring an example. I have witnessed, or I bring the example which I brought when I explained it to somebody else last time. I was talking to, I have a birthday party like every half a year, alternating my birthday and Jesus' birthday. I have a party where I invite people to my house, and then I met somebody and explained all these things to him. That's what you do during a party. And there I was like asking him, was I wearing the brown or the blue short pants when I last saw him at the school campus? And then he was saying, yeah, I'm not sure, probably the blue ones. And then was saying, you probably didn't notice, but I never wear short pants when I go to school. I always have the long ones on. But me asking, did I wear the short blue pants or the short brown pants? I essentially implanted the false fact into your memory that I was wearing short pants. Like the question of me asking implanted a false memory, and the main thing of this is people almost never remember questions being asked. Like if you have a conversation, or you can have a whole interview, and of the whole interview, the only things you remember was the answers people give and the ideas discussed, but nobody remembers what was actually the asked question. So, which is pretty. There are exceptions, of course. For example, um, I remember a question being asked. It's a very funny story. That's why I remember the question. At school, during my bachelor, we had a physics teacher on radiation and waves, so essentially light, um, light, heat, and stuff like this. And then he was saying, yeah, the teacher was just on a side note, saying, like, this is the way I turn one formula and the other one. Like I do it stepwise, but all on the same thing. So I first do this part and this part and this part, and so I don't need a lot of space, but I'm still decently accurate. And then after he finished it, a student put his hand up and then asked the teacher, is this something you expect us to do, or did you just want to brag? And this is a question I remember, but usually questions being asked are never remembered, and that is why some people want police to have the interviews recorded, because then you can see what the emotional framing of it is, if there was any pressure, if there was any misleading questions, and all that stuff you can then have documented. And yeah, but these are all sources of false memory, and the issue is it is not. It's like you have an event, then you encode this event. You have an experienced event, then you encode that experienced event into a schemata, and then you remember the schemata, not the event anymore, unless of course you have a certain individual facts in your episodic memory. And then when somebody later comes and asks you about a specific aspect of that schemata, then what you then you essentially update that schemata during the time of being questioned, and most of the things remain the same, but some of the things you extend your thing, and then you just remember, okay, this event in the past, there was something about pants and short pants, but you don't remember the source of the short pants anymore, that this is actually a question that the person asked. And yeah, so it's I'm not sure if I explained it properly, but this is false memories can essentially, every time you update your memory, two things happen. You refresh your memory. That means the memory decay is slower, but also each time you update it, you have the risk of creating false memories or distort your memory. And that's it's like, this book is of course focusing on court situations where the judges need to know how reliable is the detail of this and whatever. So they look at these things with a magnifying glass. For example, I forgot what it was, but I mean, certain things, it's like 80% do it this way and 20% do it wrong, or something like this. And then or so it says some things apply only to a minority of people, but since it happens to a minority of people or a minority of situations, it means as a whole you cannot rely on it anymore as 100% fact. And so it's what I talk here about false memory is should be taken with more nuance than it is presented here. Yeah, and then one thing which humans are decent at is confidence levels. Like, how confident are you that this information which you remember is true?
Yeah.
That is a thing which humans track, and which they are not bad. Of course, there is always flaws in it, and for example, schizophrenic people are more confident in it, despite um, being actually worse at it, at least when it comes to source tracking. But if you just make an interview with yes/no questions, then the level of confidence is not tested or conveyed with it. But if you allow for the level of confidence being going alongside the actual memory, then you get a pretty accurate picture. Of course,
Hmm.
but if you take the example of the thing which I talked about with the implantation of false memory or distortion in the memory during the questioning later. The issue is you have a schemata where specific information is has sources and confidence level attached to it, and during this questioning, the confidence level could also be um, it could also be updated. So suddenly, after the interview, you are more confident about it. Especially, for example, if you learn um, that other witnesses also saw it this way, then you are suddenly more confident about it, but not because of your own memory, but because of outside information. And that can also distort things. But yeah, I think now I went through all the major things I wanted to talk about when it comes to false memory. Does that change your opinion on people who forgot traumatic events and then remembered them again?
I don't know. I don't know what my opinion was before. I just it always just it seemed strange to me that something like that could happen. Something could happen, and your brain blocks it out, and you just really don't remember it. But
I,
then, yeah, there's obviously like you go digging and looking for something, you can make up whatever you want to try and change the story of what happened. I mean, liars often believe their own lies.
hmm, yeah, I find it plausible that the brain can block out things so that it doesn't have to confront the traumatic event. But so I believed it because I thought it was pretty plausible, and now it
Yeah.
seems that it's not actually true. I mean, so I believe that in a decent amount of cases, the visit to the therapist reframes the emotions attached to the event, to the memories, and sometimes introduces new memories that were not actually there. Because if you imagine something, like if you visualize, if you do visualization techniques and stuff like this, that is also then you essentially during the then you update the schemata with possible things, and then if you have a bit of distance from it, then you don't remember anymore precisely if it is actually just the visualization that happened or if it was the memory that was from the original event. And so if you do a lot of this and if you repeat that over many sessions with the therapist, then I can easily imagine that emotions are attached to memories that are real, and then it was got extended to other things as well that which didn't actually happen, and then traumas can be fabricated out of nothing. I believe that this happens. But of course, not every traumatic event is a fabrication. The issue is just they are very difficult to differentiate because that's a conclusion I got from the book. False memories and real memories cannot be differentiated based on the memories alone. They are stored in the same way. The only way you can differentiate is by just asking other people if they have the same things, if they know something else. So that's yeah, it's just lowers my confidence in the trauma therapy stuff. But as somebody who has no trauma, that maybe I'm biased. So
My
mhm.
trust in therapy was pretty low, anyways, and I do know people with trauma, so
Yeah,
it's an industry.
yeah, of course. And they have a product and they have financial incentives.
I think kind of like the chiropractor. People got to go to the chiropractor. He does such good for me. Well, you got to keep going back. Can't be that good. You got to keep going back.
Yeah. So now I want to read something here. Uh, yeah, I will read this. Can I do? Yeah, it works. No, I've made this gap smaller. So, false memory implantation. The false memory implantation is advised to conduct in a special room at the station that is small, barely furnished, and soundproof. The goal is to isolate the suspect, denying access to familiar people and places, in order to increase the incentive to escape and to insulate the suspect from outside sources of information and support. Against this physical backdrop, the rate approach to interrogation is the multi-step procedure that begins when a perceived authority person confronts the suspect with a strong and unwavering assertion of guilt. This confrontational phase may last from minutes to several hours until the suspect falls into a state of despair. As part of this, the conductors are to interrupt all efforts at denial, label the suspect uh, label the suspect a process. I'm not sure how much something may have to be wrong due to the image conversion to text. Yeah, I'm not sure the proper wording here. Sorry. Um, as part of this, the conductors are to interrupt all efforts at denial and label the suspect a liar. And yeah, it switched up a few sentences, at which I saw perhaps here is as one of these where it got distorted, the text. But yeah, it's just the conductors, they interrupt all efforts at denial and interrupt all possible objections and refuse to allow the suspect to mount a defense. This confrontational phase may even be bolstered by the installation or outright presentation of incontrovertible evidence, which may or may not be true, a tactic that significantly increases compliance. As the stress of interrogation intensifies and as the beleaguered suspect becomes to realize that denial does not provide a means of escape, the conductor begins to develop scripted themes designed to help psychologically justify, minimize, or excuse the crime charged. Showing sympathy and understanding and urging the suspect to cooperate, conductors offer a moral justification and a face-saving alternative construction of the alleged guilty act. Um, example suggesting to the suspect that he or she was intoxicated, peer pressure provoked, or acting in self-defense, or that his/her action were accidental. Using these minimization techniques, conductors imply that the suspect's alleged action were morally defensible, which encourages the victim to find these conclusions believable. Process of internalization. The case this is described earlier and others illustrate that here there is a predictable, if not scripted, process that gives rise to internalized false beliefs. In one form or another, the process contains 5 components. 1. There is a suspect who is rendered highly vulnerable to manipulation as a function of dispositional characteristics. Young, naive, mentally retarded, suggestible, or otherwise impaired. And transient factors associated with the crime custody under interrogation. Example, extreme stress, feeling of isolation, sleep deprivation, and the influence of drugs. Then 2. Knowingly or unknowingly, the manipulator confronts the suspect with false but allegedly objective and incontrovertible evidence of his or her involvement, evidence in form of a failed polygraph, eyewitness, fingerprint, shoeprint, DNA sample, or whatever. 3. Often with guidance from perceived authority personnel, the suspect reconciles his or her lack of memory with the alleged evidence by presuming that he or she had blacked out, dissociated, repressed, or otherwise failed to recollect the event. The suspect makes, and then 4, the suspect makes a tentative admission of guilt, typically using a language of inference rather than of direct experience. Example, I guess I did it, I may have done it, or so. 5. The suspect may convert the simple admission into a fully detailed confession in which confabulations of memory originate from his or her exposure to his second-hand sources of information. Yeah. Did you notice something, or do you have any thoughts here, or?
That's why no matter how friendly and supportive you are of the police, if you get arrested or questioned for something, you don't talk to them. Don't talk to them.
Actually, I was doing rather poorly. I was slightly rewriting the text. It is not about false memory implementation. It is about the standard police tactic of interrogation. Here is the also between this here and this here. There was a bit of a text I cut out, but this was not. This was just because these two texts fit well together. Like it's probably a page or less that I cut out between these two. Here, the introduction to this text. To understand the inducement to confess, it is necessary to know what methods of social influence are used in the interrogation room. Techniques vary and are described in the manuals that are available to train law enforcement professionals. The most popular of these manuals is Inbau, Wright, Buckley, and Chains. A Criminal Interrogation and Confessions, which was first published in 1962, is now in its 4th edition and forms the basis for the popular raid technique. According to Inbau, police begin a 2-stage process with an open, non-confrontational interview designed to determine whether the suspect is telling the truth or lying, and hence whether or not to proceed to interrogation. Despite substantial evidence to the contrary, investigators are trained in this method to believe that they can make judgments of truth and deception at a high level of accuracy by analyzing the suspect's verbal and nonverbal behavior. By the way, it's pretty much chance if 50-50 if you're correct or not. It's people cannot see if somebody is lying or not, even professionals, based on studies that they mention. Yeah. Anyway, thus it is clear that interrogation is by definition a guilt presumptive process, a theory-driven social interaction led by an authority figure that has already formed a strong a priori belief, confidently held but often erroneous, that the suspect is guilty, as in other domains of social interaction. This presumption of guilt paves the way for a range of cognitive and behavioral confirmation effects. And then here is what I started reading. As for the interrogation itself, Inbau advises police to conduct the questioning in a special room at the station that is small, barely furnished, and soundproof, and whatever. But when I read this thing, and this was the 100, when I read this text, I was like, this is perfect, precisely what I would do if I wanted to brainwash somebody into believing something in a short amount of time. And as in the text I read you, which wasn't here, they of the internalized false confession, at least with some people, this false belief only works for a short period of time. But I believe there are impressionable people, and probably drug addicts and other people who are predisposed. They are more likely to have it, the memory, the false belief, stay for longer. Yeah.
And not only that, that's when some crime happens, that's the kind of people the cops go after. And so it's like, because they're already a problem, the cops probably already know who the troublemakers are. They go grab that guy. He confesses and half is strung out and don't know where he is anyways. Yeah, if you get picked up accused of a crime, did it or didn't do it, whatever, keep your mouth shut. It's their job to get a confession out of you, to talk you into a corner. They do it all the time. They have training in it. They're better at it than you. Shut up, get a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And by the way, I also agree with what other people say. For example, Asmongold. If you just put the 1% of the 1% of the worst troublemakers into prison, or do a very heavy punishment for them and keep them out of society, then a lot would be better. So a lot of society would be better. And the leftist lawyers, they seem to think, yeah, he already violently assaulted somebody 15 times. Why not give him a very short sentence, a slap on the wrist, and then he kills this Ukrainian woman in the train. And so I think it's the sad thing is, in a way, I now I make a statement which I don't really stand behind, but in a way it I do, or I don't know what I should believe about this statement, but if it's a person who creates a lot of troubles anyways, and then the police forces them into a false confession about the crime, and then they are put away, then they may be put away for the wrong thing, but it's a benefit that this person is removed from society. So I believe in some cases this is probably the case. But then in other cases, I don't know. I'm not. In other cases, I'm on the side of the police, and in other cases, I'm inside of the whatever druggie on the street. I don't know. It's definitely not an easy situation.
There's a real good movie I like called The Lincoln Lawyer about a defense attorney, and it's got a line in there. He's talking to a cop on the elevator about one of his clients that he arrested. And of course, the cop doesn't like him because he helps, scumbags get off of the charges. And he brings up this one guy. He says, this guy, he killed his wife, cut her head off, stuck it in the freezer. Then the police found it or whatever, had him dead to rights. But then the cops and the prosecutor put a bunch of other murders that they did not have answers to on him and tried to stick him with like 5 other murders. And so he was able to get him off or get him a lighter sentence because they tried to stick all these other murders on him. And he said, it's whether he was a bad dude who killed him or not, it's called the justice system. That ain't how it works. You don't get to go stick a guy who is a bad dude with a bunch of other crimes and try to get him, multiple life sentences.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, it's I'm not a fan of how the cops and the judges and all that operate, and they're all buddy buddy. And if you get pulled into that system and don't have the right connections, you can get screwed. And then there's the other side that's the criminals on the street. Which one do you side with? If a criminal's mugging you and holding you at gunpoint, you'd really like a cop to show up. On the other hand, if you're getting accused of something you didn't do and locked in a cell and being grinded by the wheels of the system, you really would like them cops to just go away and leave you alone.
Yeah, and I think you said something which I also agree with, like multiple things. But one is I forgot the precise wording, but it is a system, and the lawyer looks that the rules are fulfilled, and the cop looks like each each person is a gear in the system, and they look that their part is done properly according to their incentives and whatever. And in the end, it isn't about the virtue justice. In the end, it is about doing the institutional rule set, implementing the institutional rule set in your corner correctly. And this is called justice system, even though to some degree it is associated with the virtue of justice, and to some degree, oh, this person, it was raped 20 times instead of just once, and now this person doesn't precisely remember what happened on this Tuesday. Therefore, it's a less reliable witness, and therefore we cannot give the rapist equally strong sentence, as if he only raped her once. It's a kind of there are situations where it has nothing to do with justice and all to do with just processes. And yeah, this is also why I was motivated to do this stream, because because of this mismatch between the virtue of justice and the institutional. And here, I mean, I agree with them in a sense that I want it to be clearly shown that there is a injustice happened, and only punish if it's clearly showable. But some cases are very obvious that where you cannot clearly show it. But the issue is, like with always, if you can show false positive, that you need, then if you allow to loosen it up and then say, okay, in this case we make it easier, we don't need this high standard, then that also means now anybody can come and just claim stuff, and then the chance of them getting through with wild claims is higher as well. So it's a very annoying system.
Mhm.
And then you have interrogation methods, which are textbook level, almost torture in a way. Like if you, this one is not yet torture as far as I'm aware, but the Chinese iron chair or tiger chair, where you bind somebody into a chair where you can't move your limbs even an inch. And they do that for 9 days, and then that one is just an extended version of what they do. And yeah, but here is a semi-cute news. the cognitive interview. Namely, there is a theory out there on how to make proper interviews, and I want to do this as the second last chapter we talk about of this stream. And this is how you would actually, if your motive is to get accurate information out of a witness, then you can do this cognitive interview, and that is about the best method which is out there according to science as we know it today. So yeah, I will read, or I'll let you read it. You can have this cheerful chapter.
It's cheerful, Jeff.
Yes.
All right. Sequence of cognitive interview. The CI follows a designated order intended to maximize the effectiveness of the individual techniques. The general strategy is to guide the witness to those memory codes that are richest in relevant information and to facilitate communication where those codes have been activated. The recommended questioning sequence, which is common to the stepwise methods and the memorandum of good practice, is to progress from asking open-ended questions to more specific follow-up probes. The CI is divided into 5 sections. Introduction. The introduction establishes the appropriate psychological states and interpersonal dynamics required to promote effective memory and communication during the remainder of the interview. The interviewer attempts to A, develop rapport with witness, B, convey his or her investigative needs for extensive detailed information, and C, encourage the witness to play an active role by volunteering information. Open-ended narration. The initial open-ended narration permits the interviewer to infer the witness's overall representation of the event and to develop an efficient strategy for probing the various memory codes. The interviewer notes the witness's mental images of the perpetrator and specific objects, like weapons, and develops a preliminary plan about which image to probe, in what order, and which questions to ask when each image is evoked. If the initial narrative is not interrupted, witnesses will convey a strikingly large portion of their total knowledge of the critical event. Probing. In the probing stage, the interviewer guides the witness to the richest source of knowledge and thoroughly exhausts these sources of their contents. The interviewer might direct the witness to close his or her eyes and think about the best view he or she had of the perpetrator, and then to describe that image in extensive detail. Follow-up questions related to this image are asked to elicit additional information. Other information that is not associated with the specific image is also gathered during the probing stage. Review. Reviewing the information already recorded allows the interviewer to check on its accuracy. It also provides the witness with an additional opportunity to recall the event. During the review stage, the interviewer clarifies any uncertainties or discrepancies that occurred earlier in the interview. The interviewer should read his or her notes back to the witness at the end of the interview and ask the witness to A, correct any errors or omissions in the interviewer's notes, and B, inform the interviewer of any new recollections that occurred during the review. The interviewer should also point out in a non-challenging way any ambiguities or contradictory statements within the witness's statement and ask the witness to clarify these matters, even if that means indicating that the witness is not certain about the matter. The close. When closing the interview, the interviewer fulfills any official police requirements associated with the investigation, such as collecting background information about the witness. The interviewer should also offer suggestions to extend the functional life of the interview by encouraging the witness to contact him or her several days later when the witness thinks of new information. Although this is the normative sequence, the interview invariably deviates from this plan as new, unexpected information and events arise during the interview. Interviewers must be flexible enough to adopt the unexpected conditions and not impose the normative plan when it is inappropriate. In that regard, the CI is more of a general guideline or a collection of tools than it is a recipe for conducting an interview. The successful interviewer, much like a skilled worker, needs to determine which tools to use for a particular job and then to use the tools properly.
Exactly. I think most things we already alluded at previously in the stream. I think here I want to point out after reading that cognitive interview, which was pretty early in the book, and now reading other parts of the book, this this imaginary thing. This is helps to bring out yeah here using mental images or that could also look like if you if it was on a sunny day in the on a field or whatever, then the interviewer could say after the open-ended narration is finished and all these things are done, he could say, and now close your eyes, imagine you are on this field again, um, feel the sun rays or whatever, and then try to recollect the information, the memories, and then this actually helps to bring for more memories, but it also increases the risk of remembering false memories. But if this cognitive interview is done pretty early, like if within a few days of the situation occurring, then that is still reasonably accurate. So and also this is hopefully you can interview multiple people and then cross check them, and so even if you have memories that are potentially false, if you have perspective from multiple people, then you can puzzle it out. So that is how it should be done if you care about accuracy. But yeah, if as we've learned in the, for example, in the Rupert Lowe rape inquiry, some of these Pakistani gangs had a cop had once a month a cop night where policemen were also participating into the rape activities of the Pakistani men. So if if your institution is corrupt, then they don't then all the perfect methods don't matter at all. They just do whatever keeps transparency the lowest and corruption potential the highest. Yeah. What is your opinion on this interview? Do you have any thoughts?
Like a better way to get more accurate information than just berating somebody.
You're berating somebody until they confess.
And, yeah, stick them
Yeah,
in
it's
a unfurnished cell and yeah, blame them and accuse them until they give in.
mm, it's in the book they say that this information about this cognitive interview is out there, and some police try to implement it, and it makes it's a slow thing. A lot of police are the way it's formulated in the book sounds just like yeah, the people are used to the old stuff and they are not motivated to change their ways. But it is also possible that some institutions so now that I think through it based on the a rape gang inquiry, for example, or other things which happened somewhat recently, um, or for example the things that Nick Shirley uncovered, I believe some of the reason why the police doesn't switch to this interrogation method is because then they lose access to corruption. Because if things get more transparent, if interviews are filmed and not just a written document, if you cannot force people into false confessions and stuff like this, then suddenly the police has a higher standard to live up to, and not every corrupt institution is willing to do that. And yeah, here the last chapter. I believe this title is a bit overstated, but yeah, it's from two different places from the book. It's a bit long. Yeah, but it's this here. First, also pretty early on in the book, overcoming misleading suggestion effects. We know that exposure to post-event misinformation can distort a witness's memory. Police and other investigators within the legal system should therefore be trained to conduct interviews without introducing misleading information. The legal system, however, cannot control all of the potential contacts that may influence a witness's memory. For instance, although we can instruct witnesses to avoid contact with the media and not to discuss the incident with friends or other witnesses, we cannot practically prevent witnesses from interacting with others. By the way, sometimes certain things are not allowed to be talked about in public during a trial, because if the public talks about it, then the judge may be influenced to hold a certain view, and that is bad, and therefore people involved in a trial are not allowed to talk about it. At least that's a statement I heard, but sometimes it seems like only one side is allowed to talk about it and the other side is not. So going on. In fact, it is naive to assume that witnesses will not speak to one another or that they will avoid exposure to media. It seems even more naive to assume that children will not speak to their parents about a crime they have experienced, or that concerned parents will not speak to their children simply because police investigators have warned them about the possibility of contaminating the child's memory. We should assume, therefore, that in the normal course of an investigation, witnesses will be exposed to these other sources of misleading information. How effectively can interviewing procedures overcome the potentially tainted effects of these sources? Several experiments were conducted to examine whether the CI can overcome or at least reduce the deleterious effects of misleading information. Specifically, can the CIA overcome retroactively the injurious effects of misleading information that was presented at an earlier point in time, and B, inoculate witness proactively against the injurious effects of misleading information that will be presented after the interview is conducted. Several such studies have been conducted in which experimental witnesses of children were supplied with misleading information. Either a CI or control interview preceded or followed the misleading information. The common pattern across these studies is that the CI may be able to inoculate witnesses against the effects of later misleading information. Once the witness is exposed to misleading information, however, its distorting effects cannot later be undone by the CI. In practical terms, this suggests to us that it is unlikely that we can retroactively overcome the distorting effects of a witness having been exposed earlier to misleading information. The more likely prophylactic approach to minimize the influence of suggestive questioning is to conduct an effective witness interview shortly after the critical event, before the witness has been exposed to the influences of misleading suggestions. We recognize the futility of this recommendation in many instances, and especially in child abuse cases where police or other investigative agencies do not become aware of the victim's status until long after the victim's memory has been tainted by suggestive influences. If the witness has been exposed to suggestive information, police and other decision makers should question the validity of the witness's recollection of the crime. In such instances, the value of corroboration and corroborating evidence become increasingly important. Yeah. So, in short, no matter the interviewing technique, once a misleading information, once a false memory is in the memory of the person, of the witness, it cannot be detected anymore. As far as I'm aware, the best chance you have at detecting false memory is if you pay a lot of attention on source tracking. So, do you remember how confident are you? Do you remember who told you that? Where did you get this information? This is sometimes still stored in the memory, and once you point it out and allow people to be not confident and allow people to say, I think I've heard it from that person and I don't have it actually as my own memory, then you can still get some things out of it. But most of the false memory is just, if it's there, and you cannot do anything about it anymore. And what is there? The more, yeah. Yeah, no, I think I had one or two thoughts as well while reading, but I forgot them. So yeah, this is the sad thing. If it's far in the past, then memory is unreliable, and going to therapy can likely make things worse. Hmm. Do you want to read this part? Essentially, the rest of the document.
All right. Life is lived forward but understood backwards. Knowledge of current events, emotions, or outcomes is well known to bias memory and judgments processes leading up to them. Victims of the hindsight bias have been shown not only to overestimate in hindsight how likely a particular outcome was to occur, but also to overestimate what others could have or should have anticipated in foresight, thus giving them undue credit or blame for the outcome. Moreover, unaware of their own hindsight bias, they cannot accurately remember their own behavior or judgments before the outcome was known, recalling instead that they were wiser. I knew it would happen this way, and more confident, I was sure of it, and that behaved they had behaved more consistently with this knowledge. I told you so before the event then was actually the case.
COVID. Yeah.
Arch Fischoff described this tendency to view past events as inevitable consequences of their predecessors, creeping determinism. In effect, outcome knowledge tends to activate causal schemas.
Yeah.
What's that word?
Shimatas. Yeah.
Schematas, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Schematas for how such outcomes are produced, which in turn engage schematas driven searches and reviews of past information and reconstructive memory processes that recognize memory. These processes bias memory towards retrieval of information consistent with the now activated causal schemata and promote schema consistent memory, distortions, and judgment of past events. A number of studies have examined implications of the hindsight bias in the legal system. Judgments in hindsight can be inappropriately harsh because people blame themselves or others for incorrect decisions, even though in foresight they were appropriate in light of available information. This has been shown with respect to medical and psychotherapeutic judgments and decisions, financial advisement, behaviors prior to rape, and judgments of probable cause, suggesting that both decisions to file suit and jury verdicts can be influenced by hindsight. Is that all? Just moreover, the production of evidence rather than reactions to it can be influential by hindsight witnesses, as illustrated by Ulrich Nieschner's classic study of hindsight biases in John Dean's testimony before the Watergate hearings. John Dean testified that he warned the president that the cover-up would eventually be discovered and lead to Nixon's loss of the presidency, whereas no such warnings actually took place. Davis and colleagues recently found hindsight bias in memory for a conversation between a couple arguing over an interaction. I don't even know what that word's trying to say.
Yeah, me neither.
Her relationship.
No, I have a need. I know what the issue is. This is probably also a case of the sentence switching, like a line switching from one to another. It's suspicion. Um,
Fish. Okay, gotcha. Arguing over
but
interaction.
I'm not sure if now the whole line here is switched up. But yeah, let's just read it. The content will make sense anyway.
Relationship with a classmate. Later, half of the participants learned that between the girl, that B is supposed to be done. Learned that between the girl and a male classmate, her boyfriend exhibited extreme jealousy. That's where and suspicion. The couple had broken up.
Yeah.
Whereas the other half were told the female was found dead and her boyfriend was charged with murder. Those who learned he was charged with murder were both more likely to accurately remember threatening statements he made to his girlfriend during the argument, and more likely to falsely remember that he had hit his girlfriend during the vignette, and that he had also threatened her classmate. Hindsight and other retrospective bias are likely to exert pervasive influences on crucial witness reports, distorting memories of the past towards consistency with present knowledge. Countless reports concern events, objects, or people witnessed well before the litigated event occurred, and often even longer before the witness was questioned about it. When asked about those issues after learning of the target event, retrospective or hindsight bias likely come into play. A witness who observed a vigorous conversation between a couple may remember it as a fight in light of new knowledge that the wife has been found murdered. Past behaviors of an employer newly accused of sexual harassment may suddenly be remembered as more sexually suggestive or coercive than before the accusation. Even memories of our own attitudes, emotions, or behaviors are colored by hindsight. Such processes may well have contributed to witness reports of inappropriate interactions with children in the case of superstar Michael Jackson. The memories of witnesses who learned of the allegations of sexual abuse well after they witnessed Jackson's interactions with the children could well have been distorted by current knowledge of the accusations. Hindsight bias may also contribute to the development of false, recovered memories of sexual abuse, in that once the person has developed a self schema as an abuse survivor, past events may selectively searched and re-imprinted to fit the new self-identity. Indeed, researchers interested in autobiographical recollections, life stories, and narratives approaches to understanding experiences have highlighted the way personal identity consists of evolving narrative constructions of the self that continually restructure the past to fit current conceptions of the self, or levels of self-esteem. In countless ways, old events, emotions, and behaviors take on new characteristics and meanings as new knowledge provides revised context for their interpretation.
And yeah, this is the chapter which I only wrote the introduction. I can also tell then what type of misinformation there are around. But in addition to schemata-based intrusions, misinformation may creep into memory from a variety of external and internal sources of specific incorrect information. Specific misinformation may be mistakenly incorporated unchanged into memory, thereby simply adding false information to, for example, inserting the memory of a car or replacing, substituting memory of a truck for that of a car. Yeah, very, very decal memory, whatever that is. Uh, However, it may also distort memory, for example, changing the color of or location of a car, and actively activate schematic processing, which causes far-reaching related inferential processing and associated distortions in memory. In this section, we consider sources of specific misinformation provide examples of misinformation, effects of event memory, and discuss proposed mechanisms via misinformation affects memory. And now here, the very first misinformation they talk about is media. Then effects of co-witnesses, um, then forensic and clinical interviews and procedures, and props, drawings, and photographs. So if the, let's say, for example, if a conflict happens and then the media uses a standard image of a similar conflict, for example, instead of using the bombing that actually happens, they use the bombing of a test site, which is much more violent and graphic, then the people suddenly remember that this happened instead of what actually happened. Um, and then there can also be self-generated misinformation, for example, updating and re-evaluating your view on it, or the mood and how and the effect infusion model. I forgot what that was. Or the retrieving and retelling. Um, this is also one thing which I think is pretty relevant for the Bible, because from the point I believe the Bible was written down by the eyewitnesses, but I believe it was, at least in its final form, was written. Yeah, no, the letters were obviously not written much later, but the Gospels and possibly the Book of Acts, they were probably written down decades after it happened, or at least the final version. And so that means a lot of, for example, the Sermon on the Mount was probably retold and retold again multiple times, and I don't know what effect that had on the actual sermon. Probably it was pretty accurate, and it wouldn't surprise me if Jesus didn't hold the Sermon on the Mount multiple times in various forms, and that's how they could more easily remember it. But yeah, this is stuff which partially motivated me to read this book. And yeah, I think this now we have read enough from this book, and we have a decent understanding of how memory works, and
But do you remember it?
I would say pretty good. Yes,
Oh, you think so?
yes.
I don't know, based on what we just read.
I already told you at the relatively the beginning. I said this is about the how everything can go wrong, but the issue is people are always overestimate the likelihood of something happening if it's scary and rare, and they underestimate the likelihood of something happening if it is mundane and common. So
Hmm.
um, now we looked at a lot of scary and rare stuff. And so now somebody who watched this stream, I could actually look if somebody is. Nobody has written a comment, and we have um, one active viewer, and that is most likely myself. Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, after watching this whole stream, now we have learned a lot of scary and rare stuff, and yeah. But my now that I'm about a third through the book, a third way through the book, or close to halfway. I don't know. My conclusion is the most important thing you should take away from it is source memory. Remember where you got what, and if you focus on that, then that's your best chances of fighting false memories. If you pay attention to it, and if you um, yeah, that's I think as far as I can tell, that's the most certain way um, to have an accurate memory even after all these things. And that also helps if you have it during the event. For example, now you're in a conversation and then somebody asks a question, and then if you remember, pay attention to who asked which question, then that will also make you less sensitive to actually picking up misinformation. So yeah, in my opinion, the source memory, just source memory, focus on that, and then you are better than the average person. And of course, if you're uh, mentally impaired, then or one section which they also said, old people rely much more on schematas than uh, normally aged people. Because their memory is fading away. And then, um, so if you have a very good episodic memory, that is also very helpful. And if you know a lot of schematas, so if you don't, if you have a lot of nuanced schematas, then you can also, you will still have the issue that you fit stuff into a schemata and then interpret it through that schemata. But by the way, I say schemata because that's I read the book, and it sounds correct to me. I'm not sure if it's correct, and my German thinking brain also influences that probably. But yeah, anyway, if you have a lot of nuanced schematas, then when you are in a situation, then you have much better choice of how you want to read this whole situation. And if you're like the communists who view everything through oppression lens, then in every situation which you go to, you will always see everything through the oppression lens. But if you have the oppression lens and 20 other lenses, then you can select the one which actually fits the situation the best. So that's also something good. So being open-minded, um, if you don't deny that you have stereotype, and you say, yeah, I have stereotypes, but I have many, and I have I I don't emotionally attach myself to just one of them, then that's also good because you have them anyway, no matter if you accept it or not. Yeah, these are a bit the current conclusions I have from the book. And what did you learn from the stream?
It is pronounced schema.
Schema. Schema.
Schema.
Ah, schema.
Yeah, that's why you shouldn't talk to cops.
Yes.
And everybody who saw a UFO or Bigfoot is probably full of crap,
Yeah.
even though they don't know they're full of crap.
Hmm. I think this claim that you just made has one risk. Um, the what you say is essentially we can fabricate memory, and so if something is strange, it's more likely to be fabricated than a real memory. The issue is this gives us an excuse to explain away every information that we find implausible. And sometimes our judgment of what is implausible is wrong. And then, let's say a Bigfoot actually exists, and we just every evidence of a certain type, we just explain away by saying, yeah, that's fabricated. So this is the risk, but it's also we should be aware that this is a possibility, that that misinformation, especially from people who believe it, is who believed it before it happened, or who started to believe it and fabricated it later. Um, this is certainly a risk of how memories about Bigfoot can come into existence. But yeah,
Next week, we're doing a stream about the Mandela effect,
which one is this again?
where people misremember. Seems like a whole bunch of people misremember something, and a bunch of conspiracy theorists think, like somehow they're changing reality. Like
Ah,
the Monopoly character has a monocle, and uh, people believe Nelson Mandela died in prison back in whenever, but he didn't.
mm. In this book, um, the example they brought about, I think it was the media thing. Uh, is it here media? Um, was it? I know it was. It happened in this book, but apparently not in this chapter. Uh, oh yeah, here. Mm. Um, and the one which they brought in another chapter was with a rocket hitting something, but here is also one. A more controlled study was conducted by Hans Kronberg and his colleagues, who studied Dutch residents' memories of the crash of the Al Boeing 747 into an 11-story Amsterdam apartment building. Media coverage never included the crash itself, but began within the first hour after the crash and included films of the ensuing fire and rescue operation. In two surveys 10 months after the crash, the author found that 55% and 66% of the respondents reported having actually seen the crash on TV, and those many gave vividly detailed descriptions of the crash they could not have actually seen. The authors attributed these false memories to the effects of imagination, that is, based on a widespread media description of the crash. Participants who tend to visualize the crash and hence later falsely attribute the source of these images to TV videos and the crush rather than their own imagination. So, yeah, this is a pretty commonly known thing that the book also talks about. This Mandela effect.
Mm.
Mhm. But like I said, this Mandela or this fabrication of false memory only works if the person is unsure about it, so has very low confidence, and they find the information plausible, and then through repeated visual memory they solidify this fabricated information. That's how it usually happens. So if a person doesn't actually believe that something is plausible at all, for example, let's use the pony example again. If you say, you remember 3 weeks ago the pony was in your apartment, like, you cannot implant that memory into my head because I would have remembered it. I'm confident that this never happened. And even if I visualize it happening, I mean, yeah, it would have to overcome a lot of barriers. So that's why false memories, when it's about like a childhood rape or something, are much more easy to implant because people are very unsure what happened that long ago when they were so young. And also like events like this plane crash being filmed on live TV, it's something very plausible, something which people talked about a lot. And it's also yeah, it's easy to it fits very neatly into these schematic patterns. So it's not all
This is
powerful.
this is exactly what I would expect a Swiss nationalist to say to try and cover up the effects of your particle collider.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. I do claim the CERN project as my own now here publicly. I'm responsible for that. I mean, of course, not ownership, the Jew owns it, but I was responsible for all the technical knowledge that went to it. Yeah.
That's something that I thought of when you talk about that. I don't know. It's most of it's dealing with past memory, but I wonder if it's connected in the way like your brain will block stuff out. Like, for example, your nose is right in front of your face right now, but you can't see it. Your brain blocks it out. And there's a problem with my job with driving all the time. There's a problem where motorcycles have a bunch of accidents, people pulling out in front of them. And it's not because people didn't see them or weren't paying attention. That happens, but that happens regardless of a motorcycle. But it's because people pull up to an intersection where they're going to pull out and they're looking for cars coming. In their head, they're thinking, is there a car coming? And they're looking for a car. They look right at the motorcycle. It's not a car. Their brain blocks it out as irrelevant and they pull out in front of them. When you pull up to go out to pull out on a road, you should ask, is there anything coming? Not looking for a car, because your brain will block out something like a motorcycle if you're not looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it has something, is that ties into that with their, blocking memories or.
I think it's not with this is not has nothing to do with memories. This has something to do with schematic thinking. That's why certain psychologists think that human brain works with schematic thinking. Um, there are other theories I forgot again, and I have heard that claim by actually having one of my discussions with ChatGPT. There it said like listed four things, um, four ways of how scientists think the human brain is structured, if I remember correctly. But and I think the schematic thinking is a pretty a well established one, and there it's like you perceive the world through schematics unless you force your brain to think otherwise. Um, that's something which I've heard from artists. Like if you just tell a artist, tell a random person, draw me a bicycle, then the person would think, of course I know how to draw them. I look at bicycles every day. I mean, I don't know, in America probably not, but in Switzerland, it's difficult to not look at bikes unless you're
Well,
doing
we
home
look at
office.
them every day because in America we were thinking about running them over because they won't get out of the road.
So you do have people on bicycles.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, okay,
But
nice.
they're not getting anywhere. They're just dressed up in spandex, out exercising in everybody's way.
Ah, so it's not people going to work; it's people doing workout,
Yeah,
LARPing as sportlers.
yes, they're doing their Lance Armstrong impersonation.
Yeah, but anyway, if you tell somebody how does a coin look like, or draw it, or how does a bike look like, draw it, or something like this, people cannot draw it. They do some abomination of, and then they say, uh, I know it looks completely wrong. I just failed to draw it. I just know it doesn't look like this. Um, but you can train your brain to stop thinking or looking in schematas and switch, force yourself into the episodic memory. I call it that. It's that where you actually start to look at individual things, like here is a gear and there is the brake line or whatever it's called, and then when you start to focus on how the world is as it is, then you can start to perceive things, and I believe that's also why and this is also how then how it's, yeah, the memory is essentially just uh, the things which you perceive is stored into a place that is semi permanent, no, not really permanent, but I mean it's a place and then it decays. Something decay faster, some things decay slower, and yeah, that I think it's just in this way, and so
Hmm.
yeah. But oh yeah, one thing which I also wanted to say is emotions can go through quick memory, quick path, or they can go through a slow path. The quick path is just like you have an emotion, and this if you don't react to it in 20 seconds, then it's gone again. Or you can slowly analyze it, and then it goes through the rational brain, and then you can observe it, and then it's not an instinct anymore, and then it's like something which you can analyze. And same is with this memory, or what we pay attention to. If we pay attention to, like there is this test out there where people test how racist somebody is, and then they uh, look in the first second, how many microseconds does it take until you press the good or bad button when you see a white or a black person or something like this. And then they check, or how would we associate this word with this word, and then they check racism based on that, and they all do it based on quick reaction time. And this is obviously important if you're in a police setting, and then you have a police officer, and then if people overall tend to react negatively in a first instinct when a black person is there, but not when a white person is there, or something like this, then that obviously causes more police violence. But this test of quick reaction time is good for this situation, but for general racism or general whatever, it's very bad, because um, schemata thinking, schema thinking is um, this is essentially the reflex thinking. And if we don't pay attention to stuff, if we don't focus and if we don't deliberately try to be more attentive, then this takes over. And of course, when we drive on a road, and then we have half a second or a second time to react, see if something is coming, then we can only look for whatever our schemata is trained on. But if we have more time, for example, if we walk on this road and look if something is coming, then we can actually use our rational brain and look at, and then we can focus on the details and not just on the simplified stereotype of whatever incoming traffic may look like or sound like. Now with electrical cars, we sometimes only listen to the sound, and then it's yeah, it's a car, but it doesn't make any noise, so it's irrelevant. Yeah. Would you say that is in alignment with what you suspected?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm like, I'm half, not even halfway through a book yet, that I'm acting like I'm the expert of everything. That's why I read many different books on different topics, because then I can be expert in everything. Yeah.
That'll be covered in the next chapter.
Yeah. No, but the next chapter, or the next two streams, I have two possible ones lined up as next ones. Um, one is about my intuition about theology, and the other one is about society, like institutions and culture and stuff like this. So these are the next two streams, and yeah, I don't know why. I said it because you said that would be next chapter. I'm making wild speculations based on very limited education. But oh yeah, education doesn't make somebody smart. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Phil Zuckerman is an prime example of somebody where education didn't help at all.
Who?
Phil Zuckerman is the first stream where we did us together this human secularism,
Oh,
the
yeah.
5 hour stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy. It is 1:30 already.
Yep.
I didn't notice. I
About
heard
my dinner time.
the stream not not even 3 hours yet. I guess if I would have been faster at setting up everything, um, I wouldn't have started almost at midnight. Yeah. I guess thank you for being a co-host again, and I will stop now the stream, and then yeah, we can shortly talk afterwards if you want to. So yeah,
Sorry to anyone who may watch that you had to listen to both of us mispronounce schema the entire time.
yeah, yeah. But sometimes it also had a T in it, schemata. Then it would probably like this. But yeah, I think this was the least important thing, at least to anybody who is not part of the grammar police. So goodbye, audience. And yeah. Where's the mouse? Oh, here.